Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, August 6, 2025. Time in Texas, about 9 a.m. Some of the sources I'll use today: Sequel's aggregate site, InfoWars, New York Prepper, Stephen Gardner, Newsweek, Israeli News Live, Hal Turner, Redacted. Some of the things we'll cover: what's going on in the Atlantic with tropical storms, and the Clintons plus have been subpoenaed to testify in Congress. And why is Pennsylvania passing out nuke pills to its people? Potassium iodine. And the Clintons plus appear to be connected with information coming out from Epstein. And does NATO plan a false flag to get the U.S. into war with Russia? So let's get started. I'd like to begin by saying thank you to David H. For his extra support for my channel via Zelle. And also thank you to Becky D. for extra support for my channel. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share. And for hitting the like button, that helps my channel to grow. I have a Patriot subscriber talking about what's going on unusual in the weather. And she says last fall in Missouri, we saw lilacs bloom in the fall, and they only bloom in May. And now I'm seeing lilacs are now blooming in August, and burning bushes are blushing in August, and this only happens in the fall. This is not normal, and it's a little bit scary. Yes, I believe, will begin to see more and more unusual weather, and we will see it reflected in our plants and also animals, as well as ourselves. So we have this, what's going on in the Atlantic. Well, we can praise God. It appears that we are going to be protected. We have a system coming off of Africa, one around North Carolina, and we have an actual storm here, Dexter. So I'll give you the update, this morning's update at 8 a.m. So Dexter, a named storm, is now at 45 miles per hour wind speed, barometric pressure 1003, moving forward at 13 miles an hour, but also turning east away from the U.S. We have this system along, this is Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, the East Coast, that has, excuse me, a probability of development 10% in the next 48 hours, 40% in 7 days. It's a low pressure area, excuse me, but it's also turning east away from the U.S. We have this system coming off of Africa. That's also turning 20% chance for development in the next 48 hours, 60% in 7 days, but also swinging around to turn back away from the U.S. So we can say, praise the Lord for that. Yesterday in space weather, we had a solar flare, an M4.4, with a possible CME coming off of it. So we'll have to monitor that in the future. And we have this from Health. Eggs really are good for you. They help to control and stabilize your cholesterol. if you're eating 2 eggs per day. So that's going on. And this study was published in July in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Eggs are good for you. I came out with a comment recently that now I believe these major food propaganda programs like eggs are not good for you and other things, it's just that, propaganda. From Newsweek, President Trump likes a new ruling by a Fifth Circuit Appeals Court in Texas that he believes should go nationwide, and that is the Texas state will now require an ID number, your driver's license number and so forth, or passport number, when you are mailing in a voting ballot so that they can identify who is this person sending this in. Mail-in ballots are used many times by people who cannot go to the voting booths based on age or health or whatever. Or if people are going to be out of town and can't vote, they use mail-in. Now, they have to be able to give a voter ID that can then be verified against voter rolls in the state of Texas and see whether you've already voted or who you are. So it's good, and President Trump thinks this ruling should go nationwide. So now we have this coming out. This is from Intel by Hal Turner. We have some of the biggies now being subpoenaed. That would be the Clintons, Bill and HRC. That would include former AGs plus. So we have this. A subpoena came out, today's the 6th, came out on the 5th to these individuals that they have to testify in court. And they have to testify before Congress. And for former U.S. Attorney General Bill+Hrc, he's to show up August 18. Previous Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, August 26. Former AG Jeff Sessions, August 28. Former FBI Director, so this is the former, Robert Mueller, September 2nd. Former U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, September 9. Former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, September 30. Former U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, October 2. Former FBI Director James Comey, October 7. Former Secretary of State, HRC, October 9. And former President Bill Clinton, October 14. And they are being tied, a lot of this information, these subpoenas to the former AGs and the former Director of the FBI, the former President, and the former Secretary of State, HRC, is being tied to the Epstein information that was given by Ghislaine Maxwell in July through August. She gave information to both President Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi and to a congressional committee. Now we're seeing subpoenas come out. And now from InfoWars, we're seeing that Epstein is definitely tied to Mossad, and I've put out previously, I believe Epstein's island, his ranch in New Mexico, his mansion in New York City, and so forth, was tied to the CIA, MI6 in UK, and Mossad, the intel arm of Israel. So InfoWars has extra information. Epstein tied to Mossad. And Alex Jones with InfoWars interviewed a previous Mossad officer, Ari Ben Manach, who served in the Mossad, I believe 1977 to 87. Yeah. And he's currently an author and a weapons dealer. He lives in Canada. And he was born in Iran, Tehran, Iran. He is classed as a citizenship-wise Iraq and also Israel. And he was a high-level Mossad officer who could speak Arabic, Persian, and English. And he confirms Epstein worked for the Mossad, and Epstein's honeypot operation was to form the basis to blackmail American politicians, and that U.S. presidents for decades possibly engaged in pedo activity, or they could have just been set up with video to make it look like they were engaged in this activity, but that Israel, via Mossad, has blackmailed U.S. presidents for decades. So that's coming out. And now we have this. We have from Stephen Gardner, RFK Jr., President Trump, Secretary of Health and Human Resources, puts out two major rulings regarding pharma for the arm. One is to stop putting mercury into vaccines, and the other is to stop money to hospitals for vaccinating their own staff. So that's going on. Oh, and President Trump is thinking about distributing some of this extra billions the U.S. had brought in via tariffs by giving a check to a group of American citizens who are mid to low income. So we say, President Trump, spread the money, share the money. And we have this, that Homeland Security says that the mainstream media lies. I've put out in a previous video, the CIA, that we could look upon as being non-American, or we could say that some groups within the CIA work against America, and they do control the mainstream media. And so Homeland Security says the mainstream media lies and says that U.S. states, in order to receive any federal money, must pledge support for Israel. I believe that's Kristi Noem, former governor of South Dakota, current head of Homeland Security, says this is a lie. And it's being put forth by the CIA Mockingbird propaganda program to American citizens. So yeah, that's going on. Whether states receive federal money or not has nothing to do with their geopolitical professed liking or are not in accord with Israel. Has nothing to do with receiving federal money. That's a mainstream media CIA lie. And now we have this. President Trump's envoy Witkoff is visiting Russia, working on another negotiation. From Hal Turner's intel, this is not a peace negotiation, and it's being put forth as the last chance for Russia to end its conflict in Ukraine. And it's believed that Moscow will not be in open conflict with Washington, D.C. via media platforms. So that's going on. We have this. So we have several sources being put forth that the deep state NATO wants to stage a false flag in Ukraine or around Ukraine to drag in the U.S. into open conflict with Russia. So I say again, President Trump, get us out of NATO. So we have this from Hal Turner's intel. A false flag operation is being put forth by NATO to hit a Russian, what's called shadow fleet, transporting Russian oil. So we have Russia, Belarus, Ukraine. It's believed that NATO wants to stage a false flag operation in the Baltic Sea to hit a Russian oil tanker. And I don't know how they're going to stage a false flag like that. Are they going to say the U.S. hit it? NATO is that much of a serpent, a snake, a deep state operation. It would turn around and try to destroy America, even though primarily America with money and weapons and troops supports NATO. The heads of NATO are deep staters. So some type of false flag plan is being put in place by the deep state UK to hit a Russian oil tanker and then say, when the oil spill spreads and threatens NATO nations, then to say that brings in Article 5. If you hit one NATO nation, then all NATO nations will respond. It's an attempt by the deep state UK to drag the US into a war against Russia. And it's being planned in the UK to sabotage Russian oil tankers and to detain also Russian ships that are sailing in international waters and going to NATO ports. All of this is an attempt to bring about Article 5 and drag the U.S. into open war with Russia. The UK is not the friend of America. And just in the last 24 hours, Australia has issued a level 2 travel advisory for Australian citizens, to the UK. And we have this. So now we've been hearing about digital IDs, a real ID in the US. And now Mexico, excuse me, is currently putting in place a digital ID that requires, excuse me, fingerprints, eye scans, and a photo that has a QR code embedded. I believe that's probably what we currently have, this photo with the QR code embedded on our Texas driver's license. And they will put this in place by February of 2026, so in a few months. And then Mexico's law is you must have this digital ID by February in order to go to any school, primary, secondary, college, in order to file your taxes and also keep your job. And it will regulate companies beginning in August to make sure that any employee of any company in Mexico, their employees have the digital ID. You must have the digital ID by February in Mexico to apply for a passport. And then they will begin collecting the same biometric ID, fingerprint, eye scan, and QR code embedded in a photo for minors within 120 days. So Mexico's ID program sounds much more stringent than the US. And we have this. And I found this very curious. So we've got Florida, New York, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is going to begin handing out potassium iodide pills to some of its population in August 14. So they're handing out what's called Nuke pills. These are potassium iodide. They're going to begin handing them out August 14 they have in Pennsylvania 4 nuclear reactor power plants. If you live within 10 miles of any of these nuclear power plants by August 14, they will hand out these potassium iodide pills to you. Now, potassium iodide is only to be taken when you have direct catastrophic exposure to radiation. Is to protect your thyroid, and in the event of direct exposure, it's not a prophylactic, and you're only to take it when the government advises you or your doctor. I find it strange that Pennsylvania is going to this expense and an administrative burden to hand out tens of thousands of potassium iodide pills to its people who live within 10 miles of any of its 4 nuclear power plants beginning August 14. What does the state of Pennsylvania know that the rest of us do not? And that was New York Prepper who reported that. He lives in Pennsylvania. And we have this. So we'll begin some more things about that major war that NATO wants to get the U.S. into in Ukraine. So we have this from DURAN that, so Russia has been, we know that there are 4 areas Russia claims as Russian territory: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson. Now, Russia, it has 100 to 150,000 troops right in this area. And it's believed they're now going to move to take this side of Kherson. And I believe they'll also make their move for the Odessa port on the Black Sea. But they have massed 100,000 to 150,000 troops in this area. And it's believed, and currently Russia is hitting both Odessa and Kiev. Kiev is the capital city where the government is located in Ukraine. Russia daily now is hitting both Odessa and Kiev with drones and missiles. But it appears now that some major battle is being set up on the west side of Kherson to move further into Ukraine, and also most likely to take Odessa. So that's going on. And several members of Ukraine's government came out recently and said Ukraine military has experienced 400,000 desertions. And even Budanov, the head of Ukraine Intel, says that in the next few months, Ukraine might cease to exist. And that goes along with what we're hearing from the Russian government, that Russia's assessment is Ukraine will cease to exist as a nation in the next 2 to 3 months. Now, with that going on, we have concurrent with that the UK's false flag attempt to hit Russian oil tankers and drag the U.S. into this war. As an American citizen, I say this to the UK and NATO: shut up. The American people do not support war. We have this from BORZIKKMAN, that Russia has hit a Sloviansk hotel. Sloviansk would be in about this area, Sloviansk. And they have taken out military advisors from the nations of America, the UK, and France. About 50 advisors. So now we, the American people, can ask this question: what the hell are American military doing in Ukraine? So that's going on. And now we have this from Daily Mail. Yeah. Several people have nominated President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. I think he deserves it. We remember when that deep state Obama was nominated as soon as he was elected president and had done nothing. President Trump, we know, has stopped many conflicts. 5 or 6 already since he's been in office. So he's being nominated now by the Cambodian Deputy Prime Minister Chakot, because President Trump got on the phone to stop a military conflict between Cambodia and Thailand. And that happened within the last month. Way to go, President Trump. I support you as a candidate and winner of the upcoming Nobel Peace Prize. We have this from Israeli News Live. A woman was clinically dead for 40 minutes. She had a near-death experience and met Jesus. Some of the things he told her that would occur before he comes back. And that would be a great distraction for people would be by their smartphones, and that it would be good to fast from smartphones. Now, I know several years ago, God has never placed me on a fast for food, but he did place me on a fast from like TV and radio and so on for about 6 weeks. I learned my lesson, and several years ago, I stopped watching TV. So, a fast from the smartphone is a good idea. And also he told the woman, Jesus did, that there would be beings that would come to earth. And we know on earth we have the fallen angels, we have their offspring, the Nephilim, would present themselves as ETs, including one who called himself Ra, and say that they created humans and they're our God, and so on. Yes, they would appear as light beings, which we know from the Bible, Satan can present himself as an angel of light. But this would happen before the return of Jesus. And also war, and that the U.S. would be hit by 3 small tactical nukes. And we are to watch out lies being put forth by new religions. And as I brought out in my previous video, it's believed in Silicon Valley in California, mad scientists are working with AI to design new religions for the 21st century. I say, stay close to God and ask him any questions you have. He knows everything. And we have this intel from Hal Turner that just came out this morning that Russia will not comply with Witkoff and his demands for a ceasefire, and that Russia will pursue its military objectives in Ukraine. Russia believes Ukraine will cease to exist as a nation in 2 to 3 months. Russia does not believe China will bow to President Trump's secondary sanctions on any nations buying Russian oil. Russia believes China will continue to buy oil from Russia. And Russia does want good relations with the U.S., but Russia will not change its military objectives in Ukraine. And we have this from Dr. William Mount, his intel, that MI6, the UK British military, have a false flag plan to hit a Russian oil tanker, produce an oil spill, either in the Suez Canal or the Straits of Hormuz, and then drag NATO and the U.S. into war with Russia. We have this. Also coming in, new intel, excuse me, the U.S. now has a plan to hit 31 sites in Iran, and that Iran has just received Russian S-400 air defense systems, and that Iran will, so if the U.S. hits 31 sites in Iran, Iran will turn around and hit Israel and U.S. military bases located in the Middle East, and there will be, according to Iran, no ceasefire. So it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.